Arrival is by far one of the best alien movies I have ever seen, hands down. Spoilers if you haven't seen it, but at this point it's like saying Noble Six died in Halo Reach. I don't know what to tell you, but you're a little late to the party. I think Arrival could genuinely be used as an IQ test. There would be one question on the survey, and it would be, when did you realize the flashbacks were actually flash forwards? You know, when did you realize it was the power to tell the future, which was the weapon? So our main character is actually Lois Lane from Superman, who takes a really humble role here as a linguistics expert, or excuse me, professor at this university. And then you've also got Hawkeye, who is taking a break from also being a superhero to play this part, which I think he performs really well in, actually. Now, the whole plot is centered around these 12 ovally shaped, like, spaceships that come down in, like, 12 different countries. And then each country interacts with these spaceships and their inhabitants, who are these, like, tentacly octopus-looking creatures. The way the creature design is actually, like, pretty cool. It looks familiar, yet alienistic enough. It sort of looks like an octopus, but where the tentacles meet the main body, it looks like knuckles. And then later in the movie you get to see more of the alien, and it literally looks like they put like the top half of a person's torso on top of an octopus, because that motherfucker got like traps and stuff. I was like, got a little bulbous head at the top. Really weird looking, but I think really well done. These heptapods come down in their little ships. One lands in the US, and then the military sets up this little perimeter, and then they end up bringing Louise and Dr. Ian in to help translate and communicate with the heptapods, right? Now, as they're communicating, you know, movie goes by a little bit, but basically, the second time Louise and Ian try to communicate with it, Louise ends up taking her suit off to be like, we're humans, this is what we actually are, instead of wearing these like big hazmat suits. And then she walks up to the glass that separates the heptapods in their ship from the outside, being Louise, Ian, and all these other soldiers, right? And she puts her hand on the glass, which I think is when she actually gets the ability from the heptapods to tell the future, right? Because the whole thing is that the military is just basically trying to determine if the heptapods are there to harm them, right? Due to like a communication barrier, of course, because these heptapods communicate in a non-linear fashion, right? They don't actually like speak. They don't have speech. They just kind of have an alphabet, so to speak. It's really cool because the symbols come out of their like tentacles. They point their tentacles, right? Then it opens up, and then a bunch of ink pops out, and it creates this circle. And each part of the circle has these like little tendrils coming out, and they mean certain words to form a general idea of a sentence. And the thing is, you don't really get it, but you get it enough. And I think they did a really good job with like helping you understand, but not basically Google translating it where it's like, okay, well, this is what they mean exactly now, right? You can understand enough to understand what's happening, but not enough to be like, now we fully understand these aliens, which you never do. I think that's one of the greatest parts of this. But the big twist, which was pretty amazing, which I never realized because I watched this movie like 3 times, when Louise puts her hands on the glass for the first time, I think that's when she gets her power to tell the future. Now, later on, when they're still trying to communicate what the heptapod's intent is, the heptapods say, offer weapon. Everybody freaks out. Everybody's like, oh, they're going to try to kill us or turn us against each other, something like that, right? But further along in the movie, Louise actually enters behind the glass where the heptapods actually are, right? She talks, like, basically, well, face to face, as much as you can say, with one of the heptapods, right? There's 2 of them. They name one Abbot and Costello, right? And I believe she ends up talking to Abbot, or no, I think she's talking to Costello, who alphabets out that Abbott was in the death process, right? And that the weapon they gave to Louise will help them in the future, because they say basically that in 3,000 years the heptapods will need their help, and the only way she would know how to help them is by seeing into the future with the weapon she gave them, to like, and this is where it gets a little gray, to like see into the future to see what they need and then develop that, and then in 3,000 years they'll get it. She wouldn't be alive to see that, I don't think, but this is kind of the part I really wanted to dig my teeth into, right? And while she's talking to Costello, uh, the whole thing, the whole twist is that throughout the movie, up till that point, you're getting again flashbacks of like Louise with this kid, and you're like, oh well, this is her kid, and you see the kid growing up. She eventually gets sick and dies, right? And you're like, oh no, all that happened, and that's really sad because all that is at the beginning of the movie, and you think that's like the prelude to where we end up at the beginning of the movie after the flashbacks, right? But when she's talking to Costello in the ship, she's like, who is this child? Which then signals that she will have a child in the future. And another thing about these flashbacks, or flash forwards rather now, is that there's no dad, right? And there's a specific flash forward scene where the kid is like, she draws a picture of Louise and the dad, but you don't really get to see the picture very clearly, and it's also like a drawing, so it's not going to be very clear, right? And then Louise is like, it's okay that you feel sad about us separating and all that, right? And you're like, you're still trying to figure it out because you don't quite understand up until that moment where she's like, who is this kid? She's got the power to see forward. And then Dr. Ian and Louise are getting close throughout the whole movie. So you're like, oh my goodness, right? Louise and Ian got together after the events of the whole like trying to decipher what the aliens are saying, because eventually they have to evacuate and the project ends. They get together, they have the kid, and they separated because Louise knew that the kid was going to die because of the flash forwards she's been having, and she told Ian about that. And they even say it in the movie that the reason Ian left was because he couldn't look at Hannah, the daughter's name, the same anymore, because Louise told Ian that she was going to die. And I guess Ian just couldn't like stick around to see that, I guess. I'm not really 1-to-1 on that. I'm like, if you know she's gonna die, why not kind of like be there for her and like give her the best you can for the time she's got. I assume that would be a difficult situation, I guess, if your wife could tell the future and told you that your daughter was going to die from an unstoppable and incurable disease. Now, I don't know, this is kind of like the theory crafting part a little more, the unstoppable and curable disease that kills Hannah, I'm not sure if it's the same like disease that Abbott is dying from. It didn't say they didn't say explicitly that he was dying from a disease, or really kind of hinted to it at all. It's just, I was just thinking like, okay, well maybe in the future Hannah dies from this, and then Louise figures out what she died from or how to stop it, and then in 3,000 years the cure ends up existing for it, and then because of Louise, and then that's how the heptapod aliens get their help. But it's pretty open-ended, and maybe it's that way because like we don't know either right now. There's 3,000 years is a really long time, right? So there's a lot that could happen. So once that like realization that Ian is the father, that these were flash forwards, that Hannah died, the reason why Ian left and all that, there's another flash forward to like a UN, all the countries who had a pod or who had like a spaceship land in their country have this big like gathering event thing, right? And it's basically Louise is there, and then the Chinese general throughout the movie who was pressing aggressive action on to the who felt the heptapods were implying like aggressive warlike action, comes up to her, right? And she's like, and Shang's like, you're the reason I didn't go through with like declaring war and going all out on like the heptapods and trying to actually kill them and stuff. And then as the audience, you're like, why? And then Shang flashes. He doesn't just whip his dick out and start helicoptering it. He shows Hannah his private number and is like, I think you needed to see that. And then you're like, whoa, what? And then he's like, do you know why I didn't do what I did? And she's like, what? And he's like, because you told me my wife's dying words. And then Hannah's like, or not Hannah, Louise is like, what? And then Shang whispers, the words to her. And then in present time, as like the flash forward is happening, we're flashing back to the present, and Louise is like, oh my god, I need a phone. She grabs a phone, right? She gets the private number from the flash forward. She's like running around because the military people there are like, there's a call going out to China, that's treasonous, right? We can't let that happen because of like national security, blah blah blah, right? And so as Shang is telling her the words in the future, she's saying it back to him in the present to like cool him down, right? And I love the quote. I forget what it was explicitly, but it was something like, in war, there's no victors or there's no winners, only widows, right? And that's what caused him to stop. And I was like, oh my God, awesome. Although I felt it was like a little weird for him to just be like, I felt like you needed to know my personal private phone number. The movie was too good, and I couldn't have cared less, to be honest. It was just a really cool alien movie. Didn't have to take place in space. The ship design was so simple. I feel like the creature design was like relatively simple looking. It was simple, subtle, and effective. And it was just such a great movie. I really, if you haven't seen it, well, I hope you didn't watch this far, but I really recommend you watch it. But yeah, that's it.